If you are trying to train like you did in your 20s, you are not building muscle. You are borrowing time, and the interest rate after 40 is lethal. Arnold Schwarzenegger knew something about aging that modern science is just catching up to. If you want to walk when you're 80, you need to stop lifting for your ego right now. Most men live in a dangerous state of denial. It is a quiet, comfortable denial that creeps in somewhere between the ages of 35 and 45. You walk into the gym, and in your mind's eye, you are still the unstoppable force you were 2 decades ago. You remember the numbers you used to hit on the bench press. You remember the recovery speed where you could destroy your legs on a Tuesday and be ready to sprint on a Wednesday. And because that memory is so vivid, you attempt to replicate it. You load the bar. You grit your teeth. You push through that sharp, nagging pinch in your shoulder because you have been taught that pain is just weakness leaving the body. But after 40, that pinch isn't weakness leaving. It is a warning bill arriving. And if you ignore it, the collection agency is coming for your joints. This is the invincibility illusion. It is the single greatest career killer for the aging athlete. We look at Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, the Austrian oak, a mountain of muscle that seemed impervious to gravity and pain. It is easy to look at those old photos and think the secret to his success was simply a refusal to slow down. But if you look closer at Arnold's philosophy as he matured, you realize that his longevity didn't come from ignoring reality. It came from mastering it. Arnold understood a fundamental shift that most gym-goers miss until they are sitting in a surgeon's office. In your 20s, your body is a rental car. You can redline the engine, slam on the brakes, hit a few potholes, and wake up the next morning feeling fine. Your hormonal profile is surging, your connective tissues are elastic, and your margin for error is massive. You can train stupidly and still grow. You can lift with bad form and get away with it. You are, for all intents and purposes, a machine designed for abuse. But when you cross the threshold of 40, the biology changes. You are no longer driving a rental car. You are driving a vintage, classic automobile. The engine is still powerful, perhaps even more powerful because you have built a base of strength over decades. But the chassis, the suspension, the tires, they have miles on them. You cannot drive a classic Ferrari into a demolition derby and expect it to survive. You have to tune it. You have to listen to the engine hum. You have to respect the mechanics. The tragedy of the modern aging lifter is that he tries to force the vintage car to perform like the rental. He chases the numbers on the bar as if they are the only metric that matters. He thinks that if he isn't benching 300 pounds anymore, he is failing. He thinks that if he lowers the weight, he is surrendering to old age. But Arnold saw it differently. He realized early on that true strength in the second half of life isn't about how much weight you can move from point A to point B. It is about how much tension you can direct into the muscle without disintegrating the joint that supports it. This is where the concept of legacy authority comes in. We are not listening to a 25-year-old influencer who has been training for 3 years and runs on youth and genetics. We are looking at a man who has trained for over half a century. Arnold adapted. When the heavy, bone-crushing squats became too risky for his knees and lower back, he didn't stop training legs. He didn't quit. He changed the stimulus. He utilized pre-exhaustion. He used higher volume. He focused on the pump, driving blood into the muscle to expand it, rather than using gravity to crush it. He treated his body like a temple, not a testing ground. A testing ground is where you blow things up to see what breaks. A temple is something you preserve, reinforce, and build upon. The goal of training after 40 shifts from maximum destruction to maximum efficiency. Every repetition needs to have a purpose. In your 20s, you could waste energy swinging weights around. Now, that wasted energy tears tendons. This mental shift is incredibly difficult because it requires you to kill the ghost of your younger self. That ghost is standing next to you at the rack, whispering that you should add another plate. That ghost tells you that lightening the load is embarrassing. But that ghost is a liar. That ghost wants you on an operating table. Arnold silenced that ghost not by doing less, but by doing better. He found ways to make 100 pounds feel like 500. He mastered the art of making the muscle suffer while the joints rested. If you continue to chase the ghost, you will become a statistic, the guy who used to lift, but now just talks about his bad back, the guy who can't play catch with his grandkids because his rotator cuff is shredded. That is the price of the invincibility illusion. Realizing that you are mortal is not a defeat. It is a strategic advantage. It allows you to play the long game. It allows you to be the dangerous old man who is still training while the young guys are burning out. But realizing you aren't invincible is actually the easy part. Most men know deep down that they aren't 20 anymore. The logic is there. The hard part, the part that separates the men who stay fit forever from the men who crumble, is changing the one variable that every man over 40 protects with his life. It is the one thing you are probably terrified to let go of. And no, it's not his diet. The one variable that every man over 40 protects with his life is the weight on the bar. It is the ego's last line of defense. We are conditioned to believe that the number written on the side of the iron plate is the score of the game. If the number goes up, we are winning. If the number goes down, we are losing. In your 20s, this logic holds up. In your 20s, the currency of fitness is weight. You pay with effort and you buy strength. It is a simple transaction. But as you age, the market changes. The economy of your biology shifts drastically. And if you keep trying to pay with the same currency, you are going to go bankrupt. This brings us to the second and perhaps most philosophical pillar of training, older. We call it the currency of training. When Arnold Schwarzenegger was winning Mr. Olympia titles, he was arguably the strongest bodybuilder on the stage. But he didn't train to demonstrate strength. He trained to demonstrate control. There is a massive difference. Arnold understood that the muscle does not have eyes. Your pectoral muscle doesn't know if you are holding a 100-pound dumbbell or a 50-pound dumbbell. It doesn't know if the bar is bending under the load. It only knows one thing: tension. It only knows how hard it is being forced to contract. In the first half of your lifting life, you focused on moving the weight from point A to point B. The goal was the movement. Getting the bar off your chest was the success. But in the second half of your lifting life, the goal must flip. The movement is just a tool. The goal is the sensation. The goal is the pump. The goal is the tension. Think of it like this. When you throw a heavy weight up using momentum, arching your back, and bouncing the bar off your chest, you are distributing the stress. Your joints take 30%, your tendons take 20%, momentum takes another 20%, and your target muscle, the thing you are actually trying to grow, might only be getting 30% of the stimulus. You are risking 100% of your structural integrity for a 30% return on investment. That is bad business. That is a market crash waiting to happen. Arnold's genius was in his ability to reverse this equation. He could take a lighter weight, a weight that most people would scoff at, and make it feel heavier than a house. He did this through the mind-muscle connection. This isn't some mystical New Age concept. It is pure biomechanical efficiency. It is the ability to mentally engage the muscle fibers before the weight even moves. It is the discipline to squeeze at the top of the movement instead of resting. It is the courage to slow down the negative portion of the rep, fighting gravity every inch of the way. When you train this way, you increase the value of every pound you lift. If you curl 30 pounds with perfect, agonizingly slow form, keeping the tension on the bicep the entire time, that 30 pounds becomes more effective than a sloppy 60-pound curl. You are getting a higher return for a lower price. The price is the load on your joints. The return is the tension on the muscle. For the lifter over 40, this is the magic bullet. It allows you to stimulate growth without crushing your spine. It allows you to keep your elbows healthy while still building massive arms. But it requires a check on your ego. It requires you to stop caring about what the guy on the bench next to you thinks. You have to be willing to drop the weight to increase the tension. You have to be willing to look weaker to become better. Arnold often spoke about visualizing the muscle filling up the room. He didn't visualize the number on the plate. He visualized the outcome in the tissue. This is mindset over matter. When you master this, you realize that heavy weight is often just a crutch for bad technique. It is a way to feel like you are working hard without actually working smart. Momentum is the enemy of the aging athlete. Momentum is what tears rotator cuffs. Momentum is what herniates discs. When you remove momentum and replace it with pure, controlled tension, you not only protect your body, you unlock a level of muscularity that heavy, sloppy lifting can never achieve. You stop being a weightlifter and you start being a bodybuilder. This transition is the hardest thing you will ever do in the gym because it forces you to admit that the numbers don't matter. It forces you to find validation in the burn, not the brag. But once you make that switch, the clock turns back. Your joints stop aching. Your muscles start responding again. You realize that you don't need to bench press a Buick to get a chest like a barrel. However, there is a catch. You can have the best mind-muscle connection in the world. You can have perfect tempo. You can leave your ego at the door. But even perfect tension won't save you if you are still functionally destroying your anatomy with the wrong movements. There are specific exercises that are staples in every gym routine. Exercises you have probably done thousands of times that are silently grinding your joints into dust. Once you master tension, you can build muscle with a pink dumbbell. But even perfect tension won't save you if you are still doing the 3 exercises that serve as joint assassins for older lifters. In the world of finance, Warren Buffett follows a simple rule that has made him billions. Rule number 1 is never lose money. Rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1. He understands that one bad investment, one catastrophic loss, can wipe out decades of slow, steady gains. He avoids liabilities, assets that cost money to hold and offer little return. In the gym, your body operates on the exact same economic principles. Your joints, your cartilage, and your spinal discs are your capital. Every time you train, you are investing that capital. But there are specific exercises, movements that have become staples in modern fitness culture that are not assets. They are liabilities. They are wealth killers. They cost you expensive structural damage in exchange for a cheap muscle stimulus that you could have gotten elsewhere for free. If you are over 40, you must stop buying these liabilities. You need to audit your training program today and ruthlessly cut the movements that are driving your body into bankruptcy. The first major liability is the behind-the-neck shoulder press. For decades, this was seen as a badge of honor. It looks impressive. It requires mobility. Even Arnold did them in the 70s. But look at the anatomy of a 45-year-old shoulder compared to a 25-year-old shoulder. As we age, the space in the shoulder joint narrows. When you force your arms behind your head and press heavy weight, you are placing the rotator cuff in a position of extreme mechanical disadvantage. You are essentially grinding the tendons against the bone like a pestle in a mortar. The return on investment here is terrible. You might hit the side delts a little harder, but the cost is a torn supraspinatus that takes 6 months to heal. That is a bad trade. Arnold eventually understood that shoulder health was the key to longevity. He didn't stop pressing, he just changed the angle. He popularized the Arnold press for a reason. By bringing the dumbbells in front of the body and rotating the palms, you move the shoulder through a natural, safe range of motion. You get more range, deeper muscle activation, and zero impingement. You trade a liability for a high-yield asset. The second wealth killer is the heavy, conventional deadlift from the floor. This is controversial because the deadlift is worshipped as the king of exercises. And for a young athlete building a base of power, it is. But for a man over 40 who sits at a desk all day and has tight hip flexors, pulling maximal weight from the floor is often a fast track to a herniated disc. The sheer compression forces on the lumbar spine during a heavy deadlift are astronomical. Ask yourself, what is the goal? Is the goal to be a powerlifter and impress the room, or is the goal to build a thick, muscular back? If the goal is muscle, the risk-to-reward ratio of heavy floor deadlifts stops making sense as you age. One lapse in form, one moment of fatigue, and your lower back is gone. Arnold knew how to build a back better than anyone in history, and while he deadlifted heavy in his contest days, his training evolved. The old-school alternative, the asset you should buy instead, is the rack pull or the trap bar deadlift. By elevating the bar just a few inches off the ground in a rack pull, you remove the most dangerous part of the lift for the lower back, while still overloading the traps, lats, and spinal erectors with massive weight. You get 90% of the growth with 10% of the risk. You are protecting your capital while still getting the dividends of a thick back. The third and final liability is the upright row, specifically with a close grip. You see this in every gym. Men pulling a barbell up to their chin, elbows flaring high, trying to build their traps. Biomechanically, this is a nightmare. It places the shoulder in a position of internal rotation with elevation. In plain English, you are pinching your shoulder tendons every single time you lift the bar. It is a cumulative injury. It doesn't hurt the first time. It hurts the 1,000th time, and by then, the damage is done. Arnold built his legendary shoulder width without destroying his joints. He favored lateral raises. He would do them endlessly, but he did them with a specific intent, pouring the water out of the pitcher, focusing on the side head of the deltoid, keeping the tension constant. Lateral raises apply direct stress to the muscle without jamming the joint structure. They are a pure asset. They build width, they create that V-taper look, and they leave your shoulders healthy enough to throw a baseball with your grandson. Eliminating these three exercises, the behind-the-neck press, the heavy floor deadlift, and the upright row, does not make you soft. It makes you smart. It means you are playing the long game. You are refusing to pay interest on a loan you didn't need to take out. Think about your training program right now. Are you doing these exercises because they work, or are you doing them because you've always done them? Tradition is not a good enough reason to get injured. When you swap these liabilities for their safer, more effective counterparts, the Arnold press, the rack pull, the lateral raise, you stop the daily damage. You stop the micro-trauma that leads to the inevitable, "I'm too old for this" conversation. But here is the reality. You can fix your exercise selection. You can perfect your mind-muscle connection. You can protect your joints. But even with the perfect routine, your body after 40 faces a barrier that didn't exist when you were 20. Removing these exercises stops the damage. But to actually grow after 40, you need to exploit a biological loophole. A loophole Arnold used intuitively, long before doctors gave it a name. There is a word that haunts men over 40. It whispers to you on your days off. It makes you feel guilty when you are sitting on the couch. It tells you that if you aren't sweating, you are shrinking. That word is lazy. And in the context of building muscle after 40, that word is the biggest liar in the English language. We live in a culture that worships the grind. We are told that more is better. If 2 scoops of protein are good, 4 must be better. If 1 hour in the gym is good, 3 hours must be legendary. When we are young, our bodies can actually sustain this illogical math. In your 20s, your recovery ability is so high that you can beat your body into submission 6 days a week and it will still bounce back. You can overtrain and still see results because your hormonal profile acts like a safety net. But now the rules have changed. And to understand how to win this new game, we have to go back to the financial analogy. We have to talk about the most powerful force in the universe, according to Einstein and Warren Buffett: compound interest. Imagine your muscles are a savings account. Every time you go to the gym and train hard, you are not making a deposit. You are making a withdrawal. You are breaking down tissue. You are stressing the central nervous system. You are depleting glycogen. You are traumatizing the body. That is the workout. It is a stress event. The deposit, the actual growth, only happens when you rest. Recovery is the interest accruing on your account. Here is where most men over 40 go broke. They treat the gym like a slot machine, pulling the lever every single day, hoping for a jackpot. They train 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. They never let the money sit in the account long enough to earn interest. They are constantly withdrawing, and eventually the account hits zero. That is when you get injured. That is when you feel perpetually tired. That is when your testosterone levels crash. The compound interest of recovery means that as you age, the time it takes for your interest to accrue gets longer. It is a biological fact. Protein synthesis slows down. Inflammation takes longer to clear. Your nervous system needs more time to reboot. If you interrupt that process by going back to the gym too soon, you aren't just halting progress, you are reversing it. This is why the most counterintuitive advice for the older lifter is also the most effective. You probably need to train less to grow more. This scares people. It feels like giving up. But look at the math. If you train 6 days a week with moderate intensity because you are always slightly tired and your joints hurt, your workouts are operating at 70% capacity. You are doing a lot of junk volume, reps that burn calories but don't signal growth. You're essentially running on a hamster wheel. Now imagine you cut that frequency in half. You train 3 days a week, just 3. But because you have 4 days of rest, 4 days of compounding interest, you walk into those 3 sessions feeling dangerous. You are fully recovered. Your joints don't ache. Your energy is through the roof. You can attack the weights with 100% intensity. You can create a massive stimulus because your battery is fully charged. Arnold understood this balance intimately. We see the photos of him training for hours, but we forget what he did the rest of the day. He wasn't running marathons. He wasn't doing CrossFit on his rest days. He was eating. He was sleeping. He was lying on the beach in Santa Monica. He knew that the gym was for stimulation, and the world outside the gym was for growth. He didn't let his ambition outpace his recovery. For the man over 40, a rest day is not a do-nothing day. It is a growth day. You need to reframe the psychology. When you are sleeping, you are building. When you are relaxing, you are healing. If you train chest on Monday and you try to train it again on Thursday, but it's still recovering, you are breaking down a building that is only halfway built. You are kicking over the scaffolding. You have to trust the process of rest. You have to believe that the magic happens in the silence between the workouts. This requires a massive amount of confidence. It takes confidence to stay home when your ego wants to go to the gym. It takes confidence to do a 45-minute intense workout and leave, instead of dragging it out to 2 hours just to feel productive. The men who look the best in their 50s and 60s are rarely the ones who live in the gym. They are the ones who treat the gym like a surgical strike. They go in, they execute with high intensity and perfect focus, and then they get out to let the compound interest do its work. They don't overdraw their account. By optimizing your recovery, you solve the energy crisis. You stop feeling like a zombie. You start seeing muscle definition that hasn't been there in years. because your body finally has the resources to build it rather than just constantly repairing damage. But there is a trap waiting for you. A trap that is arguably even more dangerous than overtraining because it costs you money and sanity. You are sleeping more, lifting smarter, and avoiding dangerous lifts. But you will still fail if you fall into the complexity trap that the supplement industry sets for you. Walk into any supplement store today, and you are immediately assaulted by noise. Neon labels screaming promises. Pre-workouts that claim to turn you into a savage. Testosterone boosters with proprietary blends that cost more than your car insurance. Fat burners that promise to melt away decades of bad decisions in a single pill. This is the complexity trap. The fitness industry is a multi-billion-dollar machine built on a single terrifying lie, that your body is broken and their product is the only mechanic that can fix it. They want you to believe that the reason you aren't building muscle after 40 is because you aren't taking the right branched chain amino acids during your workout, or because your post-workout window was missed by 5 minutes. They want you to believe that fitness is chemistry, and without a PhD in supplementation, you are doomed to fail. But let's look at the reality. Let's look at the golden era. When Arnold Schwarzenegger was building the greatest physique in human history, there was no creatine monohydrate. There were no selective androgen receptor modulators. There were no pre-workout powders designed to make your skin itch and your heart race. So how did they do it? How did Arnold, Franco Columbu, and Frank Zane build bodies that we still chase 50 years later? They kept it brutally, beautifully simple. They didn't rely on a lab. They relied on the butcher and the farmer. Arnold's secret stack wasn't a list of chemicals. It was eggs, it was steak, it was chicken, it was cottage cheese, it was whole milk. This is the principle of simplicity is genius. As you age, your life gets complicated. You have a career, a mortgage, children, aging parents. You have stress. The last thing you need is a diet plan that requires a degree in mathematics to follow. Complexity is the enemy of consistency, and consistency is the only thing that matters. If you are over 40, you need to stop eating like a teenager and start eating like an adult. When you were 20, you could eat pizza and drink beer and wake up with abs. Your metabolism was a furnace that incinerated mistakes. But today, your metabolism is more like a campfire. It burns efficiently if you feed it the right wood, but if you dump a bucket of water on it, it goes out. The water in this analogy is sugar and processed food. For the aging male, sugar is not just empty calories. It is systemic inflammation. It is joint pain. When you eat highly processed garbage, you are literally inflaming the very joints you are trying to protect in the gym. You are making your recovery harder. You are fighting a war against yourself. The solution is not a fad diet. It isn't keto or paleo or carnivore or vegan. Unless those specific lifestyles work for you personally, the solution is removing the noise from your plate. Arnold didn't count macros on an app. He didn't weigh every gram of broccoli. He followed a simple rule. If it jiggles, don't eat it. If it's real food, eat until you are satisfied. For the man over 40, the priority shifts to protein. There is a biological phenomenon called anabolic resistance. As you age, your muscles become stubborn. They stop listening to the signals to grow. They need a louder shout to wake up. That shout comes from protein. You need more protein now than you did when you were 25 just to maintain the muscle you have, let alone build more. This is where the supplement industry actually has a place, a small one. A simple protein powder is a tool of convenience, not magic, but it never replaces the steak. It never replaces the eggs. Real food contains the micronutrients, the cholesterol, and the fats your hormonal system needs to produce testosterone. Stop looking for the secret pill. Stop looking for the one weird trick. It doesn't exist. The secret is that there is no secret. The secret is discipline in the kitchen. It is about respecting your body enough to fuel it, not trash it. It is about understanding that every meal is either fighting disease or feeding it. When you strip away the marketing, nutrition becomes easy. Eat protein with every meal. Eat vegetables, drink water, cut the sugar. If it comes in a box with a cartoon character on it, don't put it in your mouth. That is it. That is the entire strategy. It is boring, it is unsexy, and it works every single time. By simplifying your nutrition, you remove the decision fatigue. You stop stressing about optimizing every micro detail and start focusing on the big picture. You free up mental energy. And you will need that energy because we have fixed the training, we have fixed the recovery, we have fixed the food. But all of this is useless if the pilot in the cockpit is asleep at the wheel. We have fixed the body. But Arnold's greatest weapon against aging wasn't physical. It was a mental switch he flipped every time he walked into the gym. Without this switch, you're just moving iron. The gym at 6 a.m. is a fascinating place to study human psychology. If you look closely at the faces of the men over 40, you will see two very distinct expressions. On one side, you have the majority. Their faces are tight. Their movement is frantic. They check their watches constantly. There is a heaviness to their energy. These men are not training because they want to. They are training because their doctor gave them a terrifying lecture about their cholesterol. They are training because they saw a photo of themselves at a barbecue and didn't recognize the belly hanging over their belt. They are training because they are terrified of becoming irrelevant, terrified of losing their vitality, terrified of dying. This is fear-based training. It is the most common fuel source for the middle-aged male, and it is arguably the worst fuel source in existence. Fear is a dirty fuel. It burns hot and fast, but it leaves a residue of resentment. When you train out of fear, fear of a heart attack, fear of getting fat, fear of aging, the gym becomes a punishment. It becomes a tax you have to pay just to stay alive. And human beings are hardwired to avoid punishment. If your motivation is running away from a negative outcome, eventually you will stop running. You will get tired. The fear will fade, or you will just accept your fate. But then you look at the other group. It is a much smaller group, and it is the group Arnold Schwarzenegger belongs to. Even now, in his 70s, when Arnold walks into Gold's Gym, he isn't there to maintain. He isn't there because he's scared of what happens if he stops. He is there because he is still hungry. He is there because he genuinely loves the feeling of the pump. He loves the discipline. He loves the challenge. This is the shift from running away from death to running toward life. Arnold never viewed training as a chore to prevent decay. He viewed it as a privilege to create improvement. This might sound like subtle wordplay, but biologically and psychologically, it changes everything. When you switch your mindset from, I have to do this to survive, to, I get to do this to thrive, your cortisol levels drop. Your focus improves. The workout stops being a sentence and starts being a sanctuary. Many men over 40 fall into the trap of maintenance mode. They tell themselves, I just want to maintain what I have. This is a death sentence for your motivation. Maintenance is boring. No one wakes up at 5 a.m. excited to stay exactly the same. The human spirit craves progress. It craves a goal. It needs a mountain to climb. Arnold's philosophy teaches us that you must always have a vision, regardless of your age. Maybe you aren't trying to win Mr. Olympia anymore. That is fine. But you should be trying to add 5 pounds to your rack pull. You should be trying to hike a trail you couldn't hike last year. You should be trying to sculpt your shoulders to look better in a suit. You need a target that excites you, not a prognosis that scares you. When you train for the win, however you define that win today, you tap into the same dopamine pathways that you used in your 20s. You become an athlete again, not just a patient managing a condition. Arnold didn't let age strip him of his identity as a competitor. He just changed who he was competing against. He stopped competing against Lou Ferrigno and started competing against the man he was yesterday. This joy, this ambition of the aged, is the secret weapon of longevity. It is what keeps you consistent for decades. You cannot white-knuckle your way through 20 years of fitness. Willpower runs out. Fear runs out. Only passion endures. You have to look at the iron and see it as your ally, not your medicine. You have to fall in love with the process of building yourself up, rather than obsessing over the process of breaking down. Stop looking at the actuarial tables. Stop calculating how many years you have left. Start looking at the mirror and asking, what can I build next? When you train with the intention of a creator, you stop aging. You just evolve. But even with the right mindset, even with the joy of training, there is a statistical reality that we cannot ignore. You can have the best plan, the best food, and the best attitude, and you can still wake up one morning and decide it's just not worth it. There is one final truth, the most uncomfortable one. The one that explains why 90% of men over 40 quit within 3 months. We have reached the end. You now have the blueprint. You know that you need to trade weight for tension. You know you need to fire the exercises that are robbing you of your structural wealth. You know that recovery is where the magic happens, and that simple food always beats complex chemistry. You even know that you must trade the fear of death for the joy of the climb. But information is not transformation. Knowing the path doesn't mean you will walk it, and this brings us to the final silent killer of men's potential. The reason why most men who watch this video will be back to their old habits by next week. It is the negotiation. Every morning when the alarm goes off, a negotiation starts in your brain. A voice whispers that you are tired, that your back is a little stiff, that you have a big meeting today, that you can just start fresh on Monday, that you have earned a break, that you are 40 or 50 or 60, and nobody expects you to look like a superhero anymore. That voice is persuasive. It is logical, and it is deadly. The difference between Arnold Schwarzenegger and the man who fades away is not genetics. It is not steroids. It is not money. The difference is that Arnold never sat down at the negotiating table with his own weakness. He didn't stay in shape because he had time. He was running the 5th largest economy in the world as governor and still trained. He didn't stay in shape because he was paid to. He was already a multimillionaire who could have retired to a yacht. He stayed in shape because he never negotiated with himself. He viewed training like brushing his teeth. You don't decide to brush your teeth. You don't wait for motivation to brush your teeth. You just do it because that is what a civilized human being does. He knew that the moment you say, "I am too old for this," you become right. The moment you accept the decline begins. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy that acts faster than any disease. So look in the mirror. Stop asking if you have the time. Stop asking if you have the energy. Those are the wrong questions. The only question is whether you have the standard. The gym is the most honest place on earth. It is the great equalizer. The gym doesn't care about your age. The gym doesn't care about your bank account. The iron doesn't care about your birth year. It only cares about one thing. Do you